Nunca aceptaré dinero de ningún hombre hasta que muera. Me pinto a mí misma porque soy lo que mejor conozco. Mis autorretratos son la expresión exacta de mi emoción. Me dijeron que no debería pintar siempre tantas cosas tristes, pero yo pintaré lo que me dé la gana, aunque las pinturas no se vendan.
Hi, I'm Chuck Braverman. This is another episode of Westdoc Online. We're brought to you in part by Real Screen Summit's coming up February 3rd to 5th in Miami. Go to our westdoc.net website. Down at the bottom, there's an icon. Click on it. It'll give you all the information. Today we have a new feature doc called FRIDA, which I didn't think I wanted to see until I saw it, and now I'm highly recommending it, and I'm sure it's going to be, you're going to be hearing a lot more about FRIDA in the upcoming award days. And we have the director and editor, Carla Gutiérrez, with us.
Hi.
Carla, how are you?
Thank you for having me.
This is a wonderful film, and like I said, I thought I knew. I remember seeing the feature film, I don't know how many years ago, 15 years ago, and I didn't, this film sort of opened the door for me and told me so much more about FRIDA that I didn't know in such a colorful, artful, creative way. I just want to say congratulations first. I really enjoyed the film.
Thank you so much.
I highly recommend it, and I'm going to not bury the lead, but I noticed that Amazon Prime is involved. Is it on Amazon Prime now?
So the film is on Amazon Prime. It's been there since, I believe, end of March. So you can find it, just look up FRIDA. And the Salma Hayek film might come up as well. And we're the documentary version of FRIDA's story.
I actually now think I want to go back and watch the Salma Hayek film because I feel like I know so much more about FRIDA that probably isn't in the film. But
one good thing to know is that we actually both films use as our guide was Hayden Herrera's book. Hayden Herrera is known as probably the most important biographer of Frida Kahlo because she started her book in the 70s. It was published in 1982, I believe. So she got to talk to a lot of people that knew Frida very, very closely. And so Salma's film is based on that biography of Hayden Herrera's, that Hayden Herrera wrote. And for us, that book was really important because that research also guided a lot of our work.
But you went out and found all kinds of transcripts and diaries and letters to lovers and others. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned something about people that had these Frida paintings, and I didn't get to ask, or I have to ask up front, if I wanted to buy a painting right now by Frida to hang up on my living room wall or somewhere else, what's the range of what these paintings go for these days?
So there was a painting that was sold a few years ago for $62 million. So it's pretty high up there. She's actually become the most expensive Latin American painter of all times. She was not really well known when she was alive. She was only discovered by the art world after her death, like a couple of decades after her death. And now, she sells for a lot more money than most male artists from Latin America.
I'll have to save up for a while to get one of those paintings, I guess. Well, why is it, do you think, that Frida and many other artists, but why was she not discovered until long after her death or somewhat after her death?
I think because she was uncompromising in what she wanted to paint, and what she wanted to paint was really her interior world. Most of her paintings are self-portraits, and they're a look into her feelings. as a normal woman. She shows us, in magical ways, but she's really showing her own reality and her heartaches, her pain. She did go through a lot of, traumatic things in her life that inspire a lot of the paintings. But they're intimate. They're very personal. She also shows, the pleasures that a woman would feel or what our bodies go through as we mature. And I think that, at the time, people weren't necessarily like interested in that, right? The interior happenings of a woman. And that's a gift that she's really giving us, and that's why I think she's become such a symbol around the world, is because she said, hey, this is also important to talk about, and it's really important for me to express my voice and my feelings and the intimate experiences that I've had as a just regular human being to the world in my paintings. And I think that for a lot of women, that has given us kind of like empower us to say, hey, we're also important to talk about, and it's okay to express ourselves.
The film is very open and upfront about sexual encounters of FRIDA. How did you approach that, and what's your feeling about all that?
When I was doing the research for the film, I absolutely loved to hear her voice as a teenager and how she was thinking and exploring her own pleasure and desires. And I think that's so rare for a lot of people to, to kind of like be open to exploring that, and to give ourselves, especially for women, to give ourselves the permission to explore our pleasure and desires. And that became something that, we really wanted to add to the film, because I thought that was just really wonderful that she did that. So we just wanted to be guided by her in the way that she talked about, looking for she really needed to be loved. She loved the physical attention, but she also had to me, a really healthy relationship with pleasure, with physical pleasure. And that was something that we didn't want to shy away with, and just, again, be guided by her own words. So, and right, like, when do you get the opportunities to make films that feel also sexy and sensual, and that are all that are also like true to the character of the film? And we just really saw an opportunity to give space for FRIDA to talk about her sensuality and her desires. So that was something that was a wonderful thing to explore in the film.
Does this film have a rating on Amazon?
It is rated. Oh, I believe so. I would have to check, but I mean, there is nudity in her art, and it deals
that's not much, but there's more than that.
Yeah,
in the film, and I just wonder, what would you say would be an age? From what age up do you think would be okay to see this film?
I mean, I think that it's obviously it's up to parents to decide, but I would have loved to see this as a young woman of maybe 14 or 13 years old.
Let's take a look at the trailer now.
Me pinto a mí misma porque soy lo que mejor conozco. Pintaré lo que me dé la gana, con mis propios ojos y nada más. El camión que me aplastó me desbarató los huesos. Después del accidente, la emoción clara y precisa que yo guardaba de la Revolución Mexicana fue la base para mi determinación. El amor es la base de toda vida. El noviazgo con Diego comenzó. Me dan ganas de hacer el amor, tomarme un baño y hacer el amor de nuevo. Necesito pintar para vender mis cuadros. Nunca aceptaré dinero de ningún hombre hasta que muera. Así podré ser libre. Nunca pintaba mis sueños. Pintaba mi propia realidad. Muchas vidas no serían suficientes para pintar todo lo que yo quisiera.
When did you first discover Frida?
I discovered her when I was a young woman in college. Like a lot of young women, I think that I became very obsessed with her work. I was a young immigrant then. I came to the United States in high school, and I saw this painting at the library. I opened up a book and I saw one of her paintings, and it was her, like standing in between the United States and Mexico. She spent a lot of time in the United States, as you see in her film, and she had some strong feelings about her experience in the United States, and was also really missing and in a way romanticizing her homeland, Mexico, quite a bit. And I found myself and my own experience really reflected on that painting. I was a young Latina. I was having very similar feelings at the time. But throughout the years, I've had that same experience with other ones of her paintings. There's a painting of her cutting her hair because of her heartbreak. And, there's many of us who have done that. Or there's actually a painting of her going through a miscarriage. And I think that that's why we women, really find refuge in a lot of her art, because she talks about our bodies and she talks about our own realities, something that a lot of times we don't talk to even each other about, right? So when I saw that painting, for example, I had just gone through, I mean, I knew of the painting, but I had just gone through a miscarriage, and I found a lot of comfort seeing that a lot of other women have experienced that same pain, of losing a baby. So that's how I met her, and that's how obsessed I became with her.
That's pretty heavy.
It is heavy. It's I don't know. I always felt that her paintings kind of gave me permission to speak my truth, and that is a very cathartic experience. So I was very grateful for her art, very, very grateful.
And you were raised in Peru and came to the United States in high school?
Yeah, I was a freshman in high school.
Did you speak English fluently when you came here?
No. And I've been here for over 30 years, but you can hear my accent. It's very thick still. So I came when I was almost 15 years old, and yeah, so that was, one of the things that I really related to Frida's experience was, her observations of America when she came to the United States as well.
And from high school, you obviously did okay if you ended up at the Stanford Film School, right?
I education has been a way for me to really find my path. It's been something that I've been able to, find access into communities and industry through education. And yeah, I was actually studying math in college for a while, but I watched a film when I was young, a documentary, and that just kind of like opened up all these possibilities for me. And I just really, got really interested in filmmaking, specifically nonfiction filmmaking. I just love, I just find, nonfiction film has this ability of bringing like an intimate story and seeing the world through other people's eyes in a powerful way that I haven't experienced in other mediums. And it's kind of like an entryway into worlds and social issues and social situations that I think make us more empathetic. And I really wanted to become part of that. So that's why I applied to film school, and I ended up at Stanford.
What was your film about that you made while you were a student?
Oh, Actually, I mean, among others, you end up like making about four short films. My thesis film was about this man who had been wrongly, sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit, and but it was about the distance that experience created between him and his kids. But I also made a personal film that I don't show ever, which was my experience of learning English.
And why don't you show that?
Why don't I show that? I don't know. I mean, I share it with close friends, but I don't know. It's so personal. I just kind of like I just kept it close to me. I don't think I even applied to film festivals with it.
See, here's a strange question that you
Okay.
probably haven't been asked before.
Sure.
How different is your Spanish from Mexican Spanish?
So it's quite close. As you know, um, both Peru and Mexico were kind of the capitals of the colonial, Spanish Empire. So we have a lot of similar history. There's slang that feels very different. As I was researching, for this film, there was a lot of swear words that I learned from Frida that I hadn't heard before. So that was really fun and exciting just to see how sharp her tongue was. But every like version of Spanish that you find in Latin America, in Spain, in the Caribbean, has a really beautiful history. Sometimes I think Latin Americans are at fault at this. Like we compare our Spanish, like saying like which one is the better Spanish, but all the versions really kind of like carry so much history and so much mixing of other, I mean, very heavy slavery in the Caribbean, Chinese and Japanese influence in some of South America. So they're beautiful expressions of our history.
And you tell the story of Frida through her voice and through her diaries and through her writings and through the artistry of her paintings. And then at what point did you decide, geez, we ought to bring in an animator here and take advantage of these wonderful paintings? How did you, was that a major thought up front, or did you ease into it, or what was that process?
That was a decision we made when we were developing the idea, actually. So it was a really early choice I made. And that was because I felt that, since we were telling the story using, really giving the space to Frida herself to tell her own story from the inside out and to use her own words from diaries, essays, and letters. For me, her paintings were always had another type of expression of her voice. They're visual expressions of her experience and her feelings. So I always thought that I wanted to use the paintings in a way as a narrative tool to tell part of her story throughout the film. And and I also wanted to, I mean, her paintings had, it was a blunt decision. It was a risky decision. Like, how do you choose to touch, this iconic art? But I felt really strongly that we were bringing paintings, which are a type of, visual art, into a different type of visual art, which is the cinematic, a cinematic world. And cinema, film is an art form that you experience in a different way than looking at a painting in a museum. Film moves at a different pace. You're following a story with rhythm, right? With pacing, with a dramatic drive, and so I wanted to bring in the paintings into that cinematic world and that cinematic timing and rhythm. And we really wanted to for the audience to really have this experience of like almost literally kind of diving into this pool of emotions inside of Frida's heart, right? Sometimes that pool is kind of like very messy and painful, but also very, full of joy and passion. And animation really created an opportunity for us to build that experience, to create this immersive, feeling of being inside of her, and by being inside of her paintings.
And I love that I read somewhere that all the elements that you used to animate the paintings were elements from her art. You didn't bring in any foreign, convenient
No,
things to.
no, I mean, there are two main reasons for that, but really the main reason was I really wanted to be really respectful to the meaning that Frida was putting in those paintings, to what it meant for her. And those paintings are, carry a lot of like, they're very like heavy, not in a bad way, but like heavy paintings. There's a lot of information in them. There's a lot of little details in them. And she meant every little detail, right? The paintings carry a lot of emotional information. There's also the legal aspect of it, that when you're asking for the rights of Frida Kahlo, that's something that they tell you should not do. But for me, it was just like, that's perfect, because we would never want to bring in any additional stuff.
So when did you decide, I want to make a film about Frida, and what's it going to cost? And then who did you turn to get the budget to make this film, which doesn't look like a cheap film at all? And if you just look at the credits alone, there's enough people for a small army there.
Not only the team, but also if you look at the credits, the amount of archival sources that we have is kind of crazy. Every time I look at my credits, just like, I can't believe we even contacted all these archives for material. So I would love to actually. I love what you said at the very beginning of our conversation. You said you didn't think it was a film that you wanted to watch. But once you watch it, you felt that, like, yes, I wanted to see this story. In a way, that's kind of how I felt when I first had the idea. My first question was like, why would I want to make a film about Frida when her story has been told so many times? There's so many books about her. There's, a fiction film, not only one, but like several fiction films about her. There's a number of documentaries that have been made about her. But it was really this concept of, telling her story through her own words and using her own voice to tell the story that I hadn't seen in film before. And that was kind of the impetus for me to actually jump into the directing role and make this happen. This is the type of film that I would like to watch of Frida. And I was kind of surprised that nobody had made it before. So I was just like, oh, well, I have the experience from my editing career to be able to like tell this story well. And so I started with that idea, right? What if we let Frida tell her own story from the inside out? And then after that, the first people that I called were two directors that I had worked with on a couple of films with. There were Julie Coyne and Betsy West, who directed RBG and directed Julia, and I had the honor to really work with them. And I asked them, like, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of me directing this idea? And would you guys like to get involved? And that gave me the big confidence boost, because they were so, ready to support this project, that I said, okay, if they believe that I can really make this happen, then we have something really good here. And we took the pitch out together, also with my producer, Katia Maguire. We developed the idea. It originated with me, with my producer's help, and then Julie and Betsy supporting. And then we went out to get partners. As you said, this is not a kind of like small independent film that you can make with like a very, very small budget, because the film includes a lot of archival. You need to get the rights for Frida's art and also for her writings, for, in a way, her voice. And we decided to do animation, which is not a cheap proposition. Animation, it is quite expensive to do it well. And we, we found the best partners for it. Time Studios and Imagine Entertainment jump on board. Um, and then Amazon, MGM Studios, really wanted to support our vision, which was also, I don't want to call it risky, but we really felt very strongly that we wanted to tell the story in Frida's native language. We did not want to translate and tell the story in English because that's not that's not how she expressed herself when she was saying these words and when she was writing these words. And we wanted to be as true to her personality as much as we could. And it's sometimes it's hard for people to think about archival films in documentaries because a lot of people feel like, that's gonna feel old or dated, especially if it's a black and white archival. But our partners really, really understood the vision, I think, and they came on board and really supported us to make this happen.
So Amazon was the major partner from the beginning of the budget, and they put up the majority of the money, or all of the money?
We actually started production in partnership with Time Studios and Imagine Entertainment, and Amazon came on board soon after, but we had already started the process of making the film. Um, and I really want to give a lot of credit to Brianna O and Amazon, who was our creative executive there. She's the head of documentaries at Amazon. And she just was all in with the vision that we presented. And so her creative feedback was always, really kind of like focused on that vision, like this common vision that we all had. So it was really a wonderful creative collaboration that we had with our partners.
You have a ton of credits as an editor, documentary films, some very well known, others not so much, but a lot of credits as an editor. But one of the things
I've been in this community for a while. Yeah.
But you said
Not to give away my age, but you can tell from my wrinkles.
in the press notes that you said something I've never read before, something to the effect of stepping up to be the director. You didn't feel like it was a step up. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the language you use. And I'm sort of surprised to hear you say that, even though I should preface it by saying, as a longtime producer director myself, I think, I give great credit to editors because, as you know very well, the films are made the documentary films are really made in the editing room. And I'm sure that's what you were thinking, but it's still a strange thing to say because the director, the producer or the director is usually the one saying to the editor, "Oh, I don't know if that works particularly well," or let's turn left instead of right, or something like that.
I do feel really strongly. I think that it's because I as an editor and even more so much more now as a director, I really view the process of making a documentary as a collaborative process. I feel that in my experience making Frida, it was so clear to me that my vision was nothing without the sum of all the parts of my team, and that I quickly needed to learn how to how to find the right talent, but also learn how to give that talent the freedom to experiment and the freedom to mold my vision in conjunction with me. I mean, there might be like very rare exceptions of nonfiction filmmakers that they all do everything. But I really look at this process as a collaboration, as a deep collaboration. And so to me, directing was a step sideways and not necessarily like something that I was looking, up to do. I do have the directing back now, so I don't know if I will be only an editor, but I will always be an editor, and I think that's my experience, and my experience really comes from that.
now that the film has been seen at Sundance and a bunch of other places, and it's on Amazon Prime and available now, what kind of feedback are you getting that surprises you, or that you didn't think you would get? Or what are people saying to you about the film beside, hey, this is great and I loved it?
I think that, I mean, the most special feedback has been actually seeing the reaction from a lot of women. They, it feels like they have, they go through like an emotional, visceral ride through the film that also, is empowering and for them. And the most beautiful things that I've heard is that the film itself is a work of art, and even though it's about an artist whose work is so incredible, but that has been really, really special, and it just has warmed my heart.
I must say,
really.
I found the film being a very emotional film.
Oh, thank
too.
you.
I think that was part of, beside the fact that it was stimulatingly interesting and educational and so much stuff I didn't know about her, I found it to be a very emotional, moving story. And what we didn't even mention here at all, which was a huge influence on her life, was the terrible bus accident she had, the bone-crushing bus accident, which she lived with for the rest of her life, which was pretty awful. And I don't know. Do you want to say anything about that? I don't know what there is to say except that she dealt with it.
Yeah, and she put that pain in her paintings. It was obviously a life-changing experience for her that made her life very short, and she had to learn how to live with disability, and it was physically a painful life.
What are you going to be working on next? Do you know yet?
I'm developing a few things, but I'm really, really hoping to do something with music. I feel like film is in a way a dance of visuals and sound, and I feel that like my process of putting a film together is very rhythmical, and I just love I love playing with sound. So I'm really, really hoping that I can do a music documentary next.
Well, I hope so too, because I would look forward to seeing it. And
Thank
I want
you.
to say thank you for being a guest on Westdoc. We really appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much, and for your wonderful questions.
And hammers the front door and close.